Date Night. Concept by Topher Chambers. Written by Angelica R. Hill. Vinny drove slowly down the gravel path. He didn't want to take a chance of any pieces of gravel flying up and scratching his car. His girlfriend made no attempt to hide her boredom by purposefully blowing bubbles and loudly popping them. "Come on, Vinny, can't you go any faster?" Gail begged as she rolled the window down just far enough to toss her gum out, then quickly rolled it back up. "Why? You afraid of the dark?" he asked jokingly as he reached over, allowing his hand to hover above her thigh before placing it back on the steering wheel. "No! I absolutely love riding down a rarely traveled gravel road in the middle of the night at a speed that is slower than molasses." Gail shot back as she pretended to slap him. "I'm not about to scratch my car, Gail," he grinned, devilishly making a mental note that she had not objected to the feigned attempt to touch her thigh. She rolled her eyes and turned toward the window. The park's woods were gorgeous this time of year with bright bursts of orange, red, and deep brown leaves. "Baby, would you mind turning on the radio?" They'd only been dating a few weeks, but Gail already knew that he would get mad if she turned it on herself. Vinny was extremely overprotective of his beloved 1955 Chevy Bel Air. She had to admit that she really did like the color. Vinny told her that he had never seen another Chevy Bel Air in shoal blue. "Sure, babe." He turned the dial to WKBN. A woman's sultry, seductive voice came through. Vinny tilted his head toward Gail as he sang along with the song. "Just remember, darling, all the while, you belong to me." Alan Freed's voice breaks through before the song ends. That was the beautiful Joe Stafford singing her new song, "You Belong to Me." I predict she is going to quickly climb the charts. Vinny slowed and veered the car toward the left, then slowly backed into their favorite secluded spot. The two teenagers both stared out of the windshield in silence as Alan Freed droned on. "In local news, reports of vicious animal attacks have spread." Vinny reached over and turned off the radio. "We don't need that mess right now." Gail turned to face him. "But what if it was something important?" "That's the same stuff we've been hearing about all week." He put his arm around her, pulling her close to him. "Don't worry, I'm here to protect you." "You couldn't protect yourself from a crazed midget." She twisted her lithe body, pretending to break free from him. "Let alone some wild animal." "Whatever, I'm a tough customer." He grabbed her, forcefully pulling her to him. "I could take anything that comes my way." "Oh yeah?" She bit her bottom lip seductively. "You could take anyone, huh? Then take me right now, tough guy." Before she could even scream, Vinny pushes her onto her back. He bends his back and pounds his chest like Tarzan. She pretends to struggle to free herself. They're both so caught up in laughter and kissing that neither are aware of something approaching the car from the rear. The car suddenly jolts as if something really big had bumped into it. Gail practically shoves Vinny off of her and sits straight up. "What?" She sinks down into the seat before continuing. "What's that?" Vinny tries hard to hide his frustration. "Probably nothing. Just, Gail pushes him back so she can see his face. "Just a what?" Vinny shrugs his shoulders and attempts to move toward her. She pushes him back again. He doesn't even attempt to hide his annoyance now. "Well, I don't know. Probably just someone messing around." He slides over and rolls down the window. "Hey, you better leave us alone or you'll be sorry." He listens for any sign of movement or response. When he doesn't hear either one, he starts to open the door. Gail grabs his arm, attempting to pull him back. "Come on, don't." "It's probably just someone messing around with us. I'm going to put an end to this." "Stay in the car. We can just go back into town," she begs as she scoots away from the door. "We don't need to mess with this. Let's just go." Vinny ignores her pleas. "I'll be back." He bends in and gives her a quick kiss. She makes one last attempt to pull him back, but he's already out of the car. Anxiety and panic flow through her. She yells after him, "Stop, please. Let's just go." Her pleas fall on deaf ears. She watches as Vinny stops right at the edge of the woods. She can hear him shouting taunts and challenges to the escaped intruder. Not knowing what else to do, Gail reluctantly steps out of the car. The crisp, early November air seemed to go right through her. She wrapped her arms protectively around herself in an attempt to get warm. "Come on, Vinny, get back to the car." The words no sooner leave her lips. She hears a loud rustling sound like something running away. "I see you now." Vinny takes off at a dead sprint into the woods. You are dead." Gail helplessly looks to her right and then to her left. She had no idea what or who she was looking for. She put one foot forward, then quickly pulled it back. The fear welled up in her throat. She attempted to swallow it back down, but ended up vomiting onto the ground. Feeling she had no other choice, she starts walking at a quick pace towards the woods. The moon provided just enough light for her to follow Vinny's footprints. Wrapping her arms around her thin body, she proceeds deeper into the woods. The deeper she went, it seemed the more eerily quiet it became. There wasn't one croak from a frog, no annoying chirps from crickets, not even the hooting of an owl. Were the nocturnal animals even afraid to make any noise? The silence was unnerving. "Hello? Baby, come on. Come back to the car." The trail began to wind slightly to the left. Reluctantly, she followed. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from her right. She walked on a little faster. Another rustling sound came from her left. Maybe this is all just a sick prank. She wouldn't put it past Vinny or one of her friends to try to scare the crap out of her. "Come on, this isn't funny. I just want to go home." Her voice seemed to echo through the dense woods. "I promise I won't even be mad as long as you just take me home." Gail waited a moment for a response. "Fine, that's it. I'm going home even if I have to drive myself." She turns toward the direction of the car and sees something blocking her path. The person is silhouetted against the trees with no discernible features. She stops for a moment, but then bravely pushes herself to move forward. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there." She asked herself why she was even talking to this person. She is now practically within the same range as the mysterious figure. She knew there was no other choice but to step around the person. "Excuse me, I'll be going back to the car now." Suddenly, the figure pulls itself up into a vertical position, steps slightly to its left into the moonlight. Gail stood frozen in place, not able to take her eyes off the figure in front of her. The thing in front of her looked human, but with canine-like features, wore a black leather jacket and matching black engineer boots. However, its faded denim jeans came down just below its knees. The figure's eyes, mouth, and ears looked human. However, its face, hands, and lower legs were covered in a thick layer of coarse hair. It studied her with ravenous eyes that had a subtle yellow glow to them. Gail tried to command her legs to move, but all she could manage to do was meet its ravenous stare with her petrified gaze. She watched horrified as it bared its ivory white canine teeth and started to snarl. It lowered its head and continued with a low, menacing growl. Finally, her body broke free and she took off running. She could hear the low, guttural growl of the thing close behind her. The cold, crisp November air made her eyes water and chest burn. Then, like a bright, shining beacon of pale light, the clearing came into view. She commanded her legs to run faster and dared to look behind her. Right at that moment she was about to cross into the clearing. She felt her body slam into something hard. She hit the object with such force that she fell back onto her butt. Immediately, she began scrambling backwards, hoping and praying she wouldn't run into the other thing. "Please, I just want to get to my boyfriend's car." The new object was standing over her now. It was eerily similar to the figure she had been running from, but it seemed more human. All the first figure's visible skin was covered in coarse hair, but the second thing had only patches of coarse hair. A new sensation of terror tore through her when she realized it was wearing the same clothes that Vinny had been wearing. The eyes staring down at her were definitely Vinny's, minus any trace of emotion. Maybe, just maybe, she could somehow prevail on the human side of Vinny. "Vinny?" He tilted his head at the mention of his name. Her heart leapt when she saw emotions flood his eyes, but the cognitive moment was short-lived. He erupted into the most hideous, maniacal laughter she had ever heard. Somehow she managed to get up on her feet and walked backwards slowly. Vinny followed her movements like an animal tracking its prey. Without taking his eyes off of her, he smiled in the other creature's direction. "I told you I would bring dinner." The other creature howled in response. A shrill, blood-curdling scream erupted inside Gail's head. She instinctively placed her hands over both of her ears, trying to block out the nightmarish sound. Instead, the savagely manic sound grew louder. A wave of disorientation came over her when she realized it was her own screams. She attempted to run, but Vinny grabbed her, his arms wrapped around her like a boa constrictor, squeezing the life out of a mouse. The other creature now stood directly in front of her. It sniffed both sides of her neck, leaving a trail of saliva across Gail's neck. The only way she could describe the smell coming from the creature would be a stale, musky smell, layered with the scent of rotting carcasses. Before she could stop herself, Gail vomited all over herself and the creature. Instead of her two predators finding this repulsive, it seemed to fuel their frenzy. To her horror, she became like a toy to them, a ping-pong ball served back and forth between them. One would catch her, swipe its razor-sharp claws across her stomach, and then toss her to the other one. When this game began to bore them, they would let her lay on the ground bleeding while they stared down at her, salivating. After suffering this torment for what seemed like hours, the ground was practically covered with her blood. Mentally exhausted, delirious with pain, delusional from blood loss, Gail somehow found the strength to run. The tears felt red-hot on her wind-chilled face, but she kept running. She knew they were just treating her like sport. They could catch her any time they wished. In her panic, she turned to her right and blindly descended a steep ravine. The sudden change in landscape caught her off guard, causing her to lose her footing. The small trees and branches were of no help in stopping her fall. Any ounce of courage she had managed to hold on to dissipated with each twist and turn of her body. An old oak tree offered its bittersweet compassion by stopping her descent. A sharp burst of pain shot up the backside of her body as her back met with the base of the tree. The two predators made no attempt at stealth as they approached the mangled teenager at the base of the old oak tree. Vinny stood looking down at her as the other creature slowly and methodically circled the tree. Moaning and writhing in pain, Gale instinctively made one last attempt at survival. She dug her fingers into the grass to try to pull herself away. She could hear what sounded like small twigs breaking. Pulsating static feeling shot through her hand, spinning and burning a path through every nerve. Realizing he had broken the bones in her hand, she tried to lift herself up with the other arm. Suddenly, she felt searing hot pain down both sides of her back and then something thick and warm trickling down her sides. She heard herself screaming as she felt her back ribs break and the resulting flesh torn out with it. The menacing howling, searing pain, and blood began to slowly fade away. The only thing left was a warm, inviting light. Gale's lifeless, mangled body fell flat to the ground, her cheek laying across the toe of Vinny's leather boot. With a grunt of disgust, he kicked her away as if he didn't want to get his boots soiled. The two creatures enjoyed their feast under the soft light of the moon. After they had both had their fill, they walked away, leaving what was left of Gale behind. In the morning, neither of them would remember what they had done. However, somehow, they always remembered what to do when the moon came out. They had a great system going, and they were not about to ruin it.